Hello, welcome to Doors to Hope and Healing, an inside look at foster care and adoption needs in Connecticut. My name is Jacqueline Ford. I am humbled and honored to have worked for the Department of Children and Families for almost 30 years. And although I may be familiar with many of the topics that I bring to you, I am inviting experts in those fields to share their knowledge. Our topic for this segment is Foster Care Awareness Month. It's an opportunity not only to celebrate our foster families, but an opportunity for us to create a statewide level of awareness of our need for more foster families. When a child comes into foster care, our goal is always reunification, unless it's not a safe or viable option for that child. We look to the foster family to work closely with the birth family to make that transition out of the home and back home as easy as possible. Today's guests are a textbook example of family engagement and best casework practice. Joining me in the studio are three powerful women whose love, trust, and admiration for one another is incredibly powerful. Thank you all so much for joining me. We've had a chance to sit down and talk on Sunday night about your story that I found so incredibly inspiring. So I'm excited that we're going to have two shows together today. We're going to be spending a lot of time together today talking about our experiences, your experiences, and how important it is to work together to reunify a family. So we have a lot to talk about. So sitting here at the table with me is Sarah DeMerchant, a DCF foster mom who's a returning guest. She's been a foster mom for 3 years now?
Yes.
Yeah, 3 years. And Tiffany, a beautiful young mom who was raised in the foster care system. And Jackie Diggs, a DCF supervisor who had been Tiffany's caseworker when Tiffany was a foster child. And now, because Tiffany's children, you needed her and your children needed these two women, the story came together. So Tiffany, I'm going to start with you because you're really the reason why we're here today. You are brave, so courageous to be on the show and to tell your story. And I think that anybody who's watching this show, and anyone who is considering fostering, is going to have such a different view, a different lens into what it's really all about. So can we begin with you to talk about your story? You know, let's start with you as a 7-year-old little girl who came into foster care. So let's start with you know, you're in your first foster home, and you're learning to adjust. When you were removed from your home, were you removed with your siblings or were you removed alone?
I was removed with my siblings.
And did you get placed together with your any of your siblings?
For a short period of time, and then we all got separate. And I think me and my brother stayed together for a while, for a long time, and then I wasn't really in foster home. I was in residential.
From the very beginning, you were placed in residential?
Yeah, I was in a safe home, then residential.
So you spent most of your time in residential settings.
Yep.
And for our viewers, residential setting is it's an institutionalized setting where we're trying to meet a child's needs through therapy and through different services in one place with many different caretakers. So at what point do you remember going to a foster home?
When they were trying to transition me from a residential to go into a foster home, I think I was like 12 maybe.
And Jackie, feel free to jump in and help her fill in those gaps because it's a long time
I was moved
ago.
around a lot, so I don't really remember dates and ages and stuff like that.
I think at the time of her first removal, she was in a foster home, a regular foster home. After a couple different foster homes, she ended up at High Meadows. And then she transitioned out of High Meadows to group homes and then eventually to foster homes.
Okay.
So there were a couple periods of time.
So along with those moves came lots of different transitions for you, for socially, for making friends and connections in the community, your schooling. So much seems unstable for you.
Yep.
What do you remember about that time and those moves? Did you feel that you were gaining attachments to the people at the Meadows? And
I got attached to a couple people there, staff-wise, and that's one of the reasons why I didn't want to leave. But then I think making the transition from a residential into the real world is what shocked me and scared me a lot, because not knowing, I don't know, the life outside of residential and public schooling and all that.
And we're at a different time, fortunately, in our agency where we have, very few kids are in what we consider a congregate care, which is what residential is. And because children belong to be with families, and you're 30 years old right now?
Yep.
Is that how old you are? So it was a very long time ago that you experienced this in the different moves. And I would like to say that we're doing a better job with our kids and placements and that stability. So you were in foster care, so 7 years old, and were you visiting with your mom and your siblings along
I had
those-
visitation with, my mom and my siblings a lot.
at their house, or was it a supervised visit?
Well, with my siblings, it was supervised wherever we went. At the time, my mom was incarcerated, so I went there to see her. And I participated into some incarceration programs so I can see my mom more.
So the visits were right there at the prison that your
Yep.
mom was in.
Yep.
And that was also the place that you got to see your siblings?
If they went those days, I see them there, but a lot of times I seen them on the visitation days.
So you had Jackie as a caseworker. Was she your caseworker for a lot of the time that you were in care?
Majority of my time,
In care.
yep.
And so now you become a young adult at 18. And what was your path after you turned 18?
Well, I left DCF when I was 16, and I went back with my mom, and I couldn't get along good, so things happened, and then I guess was too free. I feel like I didn't know what to do. And it was hard for me to finish school and stuff. So I had my first kid at 18.
So you signed out of DCF care when you were just 16.
Yeah, it was 17 and a half I signed out.
Okay, and then you were with your mom and not many rules.
And then I signed back in to DCF because my mom still had a DCF worker, but I didn't really comply with them.
So you were done with DCF about age 18?
Yeah, when I had my first child, I completely signed out of DCF.
So you had your first child at 18. And then you have, how many children do you have right now?
I have 7.
7 children. Wow, you have a beautiful children. I had a chance to see all of your children. So Jackie, your role as her caseworker, can you talk with us about your relationship with Tiffany?
Yeah, so I began working with DCF in September of 2001. And so within my first year, I think, I was assigned to Tiffany's case. And at the time when I was assigned to her case, she was in High Meadows. So she was in a stable residential facility. And I think when things really got difficult for Tiffany was when she transitioned out of High Meadows and into a less restrictive setting. So from High Meadows, she went to a group home. And Tiffany was a runner. So no matter where you placed her, she would run. And I think that's part of the reason that her and I were able to form the bond that we did, because every couple days she would run, and every couple days she would end up sitting at my desk for hours on end until we could find another placement. So we spent a lot of time together over the years. And so when the time came, when Tiffany was an adult, she would, periodically we would lose touch. I stopped being her social worker and became her mentor as a way to remain involved in her life. So for many years we were connected in that respect. And then she became an adult. She began starting her own family, and we would see each other periodically. There was a period of time where we had lost some contact, but thanks to social media, we were able to reconnect. And shortly before Tiffany's children were removed, we had actually reconnected. And so when her children were removed, I was in a position to help her, my family and I.
So you had 7 children, and did you have involvement with the department with your children as a mom? Were you receiving any support services from the department?
Like prior to the no.
Yeah, nothing before that.
I had a couple cases that were called on me, but they were never open. They were just closed, and then that was it.
So someone would make a report,
Yeah.
and an investigator would come, and then the case would be closed.
Yeah.
Well, that's amazing that you've been able to parent 7 children, and you parent them together with your fiance. So bring us back to that time in your life that was very, very difficult, because I think when we spoke on Sunday and we got to know one another and talked about your story, you almost feel as if there's a label on you because you were a foster kid. Can you talk a little bit about your role as a foster kid and now as a mom, and how you feel that maybe people may look at you differently because of your experience with DCF as a kid?
I just felt like it was like a stereotype thing, because when every time I got like a call or had involvement with DCF, the worker would say, oh, we have your whole life here in the office. Like, they would use my past as me growing up as a child, things that I couldn't control, that I had no control over what happened or why I was placed in foster care. And they would just throw that out there as to reasons why they felt that I wasn't a fit mother. And I would have to prove to them that I was. Like, questions and concerns that they should have. Like, I grew up in residential. Like, how do you know how to cook for your kids? How do you know how to provide all these things your kids need? And it's challenging because I don't have the support like other families that grow up together do. But the support team that I did provide for myself is what I have.
And what got you through. So you learned how to cook, and you learned how to clean and take care of kids, which is difficult for anybody to do, whether you have one child or two or three or 7 like you have. So now, without having to talk about any details of your case with DCF, so DCF gets involved again at some point over the last couple of years, maybe 3 years ago, 2.5 years ago, and they're looking to remove your children from your home.
Well, they did remove them.
They removed all 7 of the children.
Yeah.
And is that at the time that you reached out to Jackie for support?
Well, I remember it was December 3rd that I called. I texted Jackie. I don't remember if I texted her or called her, but I was like scared and didn't know what to do because they told me that they had to remove my kids. And when they told me that, I didn't know I only knew to look towards her, and that's what I did.
And what was that call like, Jackie?
So Tiffany and I had reconnected prior to that incident. So when the incident happened, she had called me, and she was clearly panicked. And I think based on her own personal experiences, she sort of knew what was inevitably going to happen. So the only thing I really could do at that time was to offer to support her in any way. So within the next couple of days, there was a considered removal meeting, and I participated in that by phone.
Can you talk a little bit about what a considered removal hearing is?
Sure. So a considered removal meeting is held whenever there is a chance that a child might be removed from home, and it's an opportunity for the family to come to DCF to meet and to include anybody who they feel is a support in the meeting. And the purpose of the meeting is to plan to determine if there's any way to prevent the removal, or if the removal is inevitable, to try to come up with resources or people familiar to the family who might be able to help in any way.
Okay.
So I was able to participate in that meeting by phone, and I think initially the boys were placed with a relative, and there were a couple of barriers to that plan, and so I think it was a day or 2 later, I got a call from DCF, and they had asked if my husband and I could be a resource for the children. We had 4 children of our own between the ages of 1 and 6 at that time, so we weren't in a position to take 3 more children under the age of 2, but we said we could take 1.
So you took in one of Tiffany's children.
Yes.
So Sarah, you enter the story at this point. So I understand that you received a telephone call on Christmas Eve.
We received a telephone call, and we were on vacation. And they asked if we'd be willing to take twins. And we said we would, but we weren't getting home for a few days. So we got home late one Friday night, and Christmas Eve fell on a Saturday. And at 3 p.m. that afternoon, the twins were brought to our home. And just kind of, hi, how are you? Merry Christmas. Thank you so much for doing this. You know, we've got to go. And I think the initial part of it for me was very heavy on my heart, because it was the holiday. And I thought, I knew nothing of Tiffany's story. I didn't know how many children she had. But I thought my heart was heavy for her, because it was Christmas time, and where people are running around doing last minute things, they were 7 months old at the time, and this clearly was their first Christmas. And I thought I had a hard time that day. So a few days later, during our training, you hear about working in partnership with the bio family, and that just kept coming to me over and over again. So I reached out to DCF and asked for her telephone number. And there were some hesitation about that. It wasn't an easy thing where they were handing over her number, because I think the worker at the time felt like it would be too overwhelming for her and it would just cause her a lot of anxiety. But after further conversation, I stated, as a mother myself, aside from whatever the situation is, I want this mother to hear another mother on the other end to say, it's okay, it's gonna be okay. I'm a mom myself, and I'm here for you, and we're gonna get your babies home to you. So I initially called, and I blocked my number, and I'll never forget, it was a Friday night, it was pouring rain, and I pulled over in a parking lot, and I just thought, okay, I'm gonna do this. So I called and said, hi Tiffany, my name is Sarah, I'm the foster mother for your boys. I know you probably didn't pick up because I blocked the call, but I'm gonna wait about 15 minutes and I'm gonna give you a call back. And if you wanna talk to me, by all means do so. But if you want me just to leave you alone and stay out of it, I will respect that as well. But I just wanna be able to have a few minutes so you and I can talk. So I waited, and those 15 minutes seemed like forever.
So let me stop you there
okay.
for a second. So Tiffany, when you listened to that voicemail message before you have any contact with Sarah, what were you thinking when you heard Sarah's voice in that message?
I was like shocked because she called me. Since they've been gone, I didn't know where they were at. And I was kind of like mixed emotions. I don't know, I kind of snapped on her when she finally did answer the phone, but it was happy, like enjoyment, but sad at the same
Because
time.
you didn't expect that.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm sorry. So go
No,
on
that's
with your
okay.
story.
So I called, and she answered the phone very, hello, hi, yes. She was very short answers. And I said, I understand you might not want to talk to me, but I just want you to know that if there's any, whatever you need me to do for you, to provide for you and your family, you need to let me know that. Do you need me to call you every single night before they go to bed? Do you need me to call you twice a day? I'll do whatever you need me to do, because the goal is we're gonna get your babies home. And I know, and she was angry partly because, like she had stated, they were removed earlier in the month and I didn't get them till Christmas Eve. So during that period of time, she had no idea where they were. And I feel like that's very important for foster parents. When children are placed with them, to take the time. If you have to block the call, you need to call so they can hear that there's somebody else on the other end of the line. They might have choice words for you, but that's what you sign up for,
It's a chance you're going to take.
Absolutely.
So, and then, if we can just talk a little bit about you, Jackie. So you, in recapping Tiffany's story, there's 7 children. 3 of them are in foster care. 2 are with Sarah, 1 is with Jackie, and your other 4 children are with their birth dad, correct? Okay. So when you're taking care of one of Tiffany's children, what did that feel like? I know that you had a connection with Tiffany. Were you able to talk to her on the telephone, get some kind of input on how the kids are consoled?
Yep. So I think we were in communication pretty frequently during that time. And the night he was brought to our house, I think he came in his pajamas. It was late, and he had his blanket and his stuffed monkey. And he just sat on the couch, and he wasn't crying. I think he was sort of in shock. He was 2 at the time, and he wouldn't let anyone hold him except me. I do remember that, but I was able to call Tiffany, and I was able to ask her, like, what does he need? Like, I don't know what to do. And I remember she said he likes a sippy cup. She had packed it. It was a particular sippy cup. You'd hit it and it would light up. Remember that? And she said he likes chocolate milk and he likes to watch the Minions on YouTube. And so that's what we did. And even that like small thing, it was like the only thing that was familiar to him at that time. And had I not had the relationship with Tiffany, I wouldn't have known what to do. And I think that sort of set the tone. And
So for you, Tiffany, for our birth families who have children removed from their care, you do lose such a sense of control, because you don't always know. I mean, you may have known that one of your children was going to Jackie and your other 4 children were with their dad, but you don't know. So you lose that control of being able to parent them or console them or do those special things. Did you feel like you had gotten a little bit of empowerment back when they were trusting you to tell them how to help take care of your children?
Yeah.
I can imagine that would feel that way.
I think it allowed her to retain that feeling that she was the mother, you know,
Yeah.
and that nobody could take that from her.
Right.
Because I just felt like in the beginning, like they were trying to replace me as a mom when I wasn't hearing like what my kids were doing or anything.
Well, especially because you had experience with DCF as a child yourself, and you didn't know in your experience as a child, you didn't know what that foster family, nurturing, loving experience felt like because you were in residential care. So I can only imagine how more frightened you were for your children and your lack of control in helping to navigate this crazy system, because we do, you know, there's so many facets of the work that DCF does, and ultimately our goal is to keep kids safe and to get children back home. But I just believe that your mind and your heart were so heavy with all of that was
I just
happening.
feel like foster parents should contact the birth mother when they receive a child, even if it's private or what, just to let them know that their child's okay.
Yeah, I agree, and
It's more of a soothing phone call regardless of the emotions that are going on with the parent. Even if it's a voicemail, just to let them know.
Sure, and this, I think the conversation that we're having right now will dispel some of those myths that, you know, foster parents are just here to take away your children and raise a family of their own. And I think that Sarah and Jackie have been able to demonstrate, you know, Jackie, who you knew and were familiar with, and Sarah, who you've come to know and become familiar with, and, you know, you're all very much like family. We're going to continue this show next week.
Okay.
So we're asking our viewers to stay tuned so that we can continue this conversation and sharing the story of Tiffany and Sarah and Jackie. There's so much to still talk about. But before we end the show, I want to share with both of you, Sarah and Tiffany, a gift from Habitat for Humanity. So Habitat for Humanity is working with the Kluwer Foundation in cooperation with Habitat for Humanity, and they've chosen DCF as a recipient of playhouses. So we in turn are dedicating those 2 playhouses to you, so that you and Tiffany, Sarah and Tiffany, can have these playhouses in the backyard for the children to play with and explore and just be kids.
Thank you.
So thank you for being here, and we'll see you next week.